Hello Flosstube, welcome to Snickerdoodle Stitch. My name is Kathleen and this is normally a channel about cross stitch. Today I'm doing something a little bit different. I am going to be away at Stitch North and then doing some sightseeing in Canada and New York and upstate Pennsylvania. And so I decided, a couple people have asked for this, I decided I would go ahead and do a quick video that I could post while I'm away. And normally I'm on screen for those of you who haven't visited me before. This one I'm not going to be on screen so that you can really see what I'm working with here with the project bags. And I will be back Memorial Day weekend, that Friday, with the regular video showing all of my stitching. So this video is going to be how to make your own project bags. And I'm not going to move to the sewing machine. That's just a little more equipment moving around than what I'm capable of dealing with this evening. But I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. And the kind of project bags that I prefer are these ones with the plastic front. I know some people don't like them, especially if they live in the warmer climates. Your photocopied patterns can stick on the inside. If that does happen, just pull it out. It will potentially pull some of the ink off your pattern, but your project bag is not ruined. Whatever is stuck on in there, a little bit of alcohol and a cotton ball, wipe it around the inside. It comes right off, I promise. It will look like brand new, and alcohol evaporates very quickly, so you're good to go in no time. So that's what I'm going to be showing, is how to make this kind of project bag, and you can see you can make them in all kinds of different sizes. I made 2 of these and I bought one. This one is actually bigger than what I normally make. This one might be a skosh smaller. This might be my standard size. And then this is one that I purchased and it is even smaller, but I will show why I bought it in a minute. So the supplies that you will need, or that you will find helpful: a rotary cutter and a cutting mat would be one thing. Not necessarily. It's just going to be, you're going to have to measure or make a template and cut them out with scissors, your pieces. The rotary cutter and the cutting mat, and then I like to use my 15-inch quilting square. Wonderful for squaring everything up, making sure that your corners are nice and square, cleaning up edges as you stitch, cutting out your pieces before you start stitching. I obviously don't normally use this large of a square on this size of a mat. I have a much larger mat. That's what I normally use. But this is here on my, we're actually on my big board, cutting board that I made. So other supplies that are helpful: 1/4-inch seam tape. Dritz makes one. I buy mine on Amazon and I get them in a 3-pack for under 10 bucks. I'll put a link below to one of them. I've bought a couple different brands. They all work well. These are not items that are going through the washing machine all the time. I'm really just using this for some stability and to keep things from stretching out when I do 2 of my seams. So I will show you where I use this. We're going to actually put that on. And then quick clips. So I think Quick Clips was the original brand, or Clip-Its with a K was the original brand. I have some generic ones, and I have some of the original brand. These are fantastic when doing binding, with holding these pieces together for assembly. I use these for all kinds of things. I use them to hold my stitched piece on foam core boards so that I can show you my stitching, but a small handful is all you need. I've got 5 here. 5 or 6 is plenty, so you don't need, like, you know, a jar of 50 of them or anything crazy. All right, let's talk a little bit about the bags. I typically make mine 13 by 14 with a few exceptions. I have some that are smaller. I will often make them different sizes. It's inside. No, it's not. Yes, it is. So this bag is larger than normal, and it's because this was a small panel piece with the the cat in here. And so I wanted to keep the panel piece intact, and that's why this bag is slightly larger. So often the fabric that I'm using drives the size. But 13 by 14 is a good kind of mid-size. 8.5 by 11 patterns fit in here well. What doesn't fit in here well is the size of Q-snap that the configuration I normally do. And because of that, the bag that I'm making this evening is a little bit bigger. It's 14 by 15 so that my Q-snap will fit in long ways. Because if I'm working on a project, depending where the Q-snap is snapped, I will leave the project in the Q-snap, and I don't want to keep taking it out on and off. So the other things that we need, let's start talking about the supplies that you actually need to make the bag. You will need some sort of batting. Batting, interfacing, I'm going to talk through a couple different options here, and that's actually why I have this bag. These all three have different things inside, and that's why I chose them to show. This one has Soft and Stable in it. Soft and Stable is like this. It's made by Annie's, and it's a product that is sort of like the foam that's in the headliner in your car, so ceiling of your car. This is a Pellon brand. This one is not Soft and Stable that I have here, but it looks very much like Soft and Stable. There's another brand, Bosel. You know, if you have a quilt shop nearby or you're ordering online, Bosel or Soft and Stable is probably what I would recommend. I would have recommended Pellon when we had Joann's, but now that Joann's is no more, it may actually be trickier to get a hold of Pellon than it is the Bosel or the Soft and Stable, which come packaged in smaller packages. I buy them in huge quantities because I also do bag making, like pocketbooks and tote bags and things. And so I go through a lot of Soft and Stable. But this is the Pellon brand. If I use the Soft and Stable is not fusible. So you can't iron and stick your fabric to it. So if I use Soft and Stable, I like to use some fusible webbing just so I can iron my fabric to the Soft and Stable. So that's what I've done here. You also have the option of doing some sort of quilting. I'm usually in a hurry to just crank out half a dozen project pouches, and so I don't want to spend my time quilting. I just want to get the assembly done and move on. So that's why I like the fusible interfacing. So this one is Soft and Stable, and I've used some fusible webbing, and I actually think it's only about this wide. The stuff I had was on a roll, and it was only maybe 10 inches wide. So it doesn't go clear edge to edge, but it holds down what I need it to hold down here. And then the stitching around the edge will hold the rest down. So you need some sort of interfacing. Why I like Soft and Stable, see how this will stay standing. So I can prop these up on a bookshelf and they all stay upright. They're not flopping around. They're consistent shapes and sizes. I've sort of ruined that because I've made a few different sizes. And I've bought some project bags which don't have the plastic. And I've made some that don't have the plastic. This one has just batting inside. I was giving this a try. I don't hate it. It does stand up okay when there's a project in here. And I've got the, you know, there's a full 8.5 by 11. This is a pretty thick pattern in here. But without this in here, it is floppier than what I really like. So this was an experiment using just regular batting, and I probably will not do that again. It's what a lot of bag makers make. If you have bags and they seem a little, you know, see how this is not flimsy. It's very stiff. If you have bags that are floppy is a better word, like this is very floppy. This folds right back. I couldn't do this with Soft and Stable like that. If it doesn't bother you, just use batting. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be easier to find. The foam, like I was showing, is a little bit pricier. This one I bought, and I bought it because I wanted to remember what they used. This they've actually quilted. This is also one of my absolute favorite fabric lines. It's from Urban Chicks from Moda, and they do actually this is also from Urban Chicks. They do a lot of the retro patterns. But this one is very stiff. And what they have in here is most likely a Pellon product, which is Deco Bond. It is very, very stiff. It's often used to give structure to different home deck projects or bag making. I did price them out because after I bought this and I got it home, I was like, oh, maybe I'll use that instead of the Soft and Stable Pellon Bosal. This may be cheaper. It's not. It's about the same price. It isn't as puffy, but it does stand up nice and firm. Don't know how this will hold up over time, because I did just buy this bag when I was at Needlework Extravaganza in New Jersey last month. So those are some options for the batting / interfacing. So first thing we need is that. I have cut this to 14 by 15. That's the size I want to make this bag. And like I said, that's because I want my zipper to be able to accommodate my Q-snap. You're going to need a piece of fabric the same size for the back. So this is going to be my back. And I'm looking because, all right, they do go every direction. This is going to be my back. And then this is going to be my front. So this will be the inside of the bag. This is what will show through the plastic. I need a piece of plastic. You only need it to be 15 inches wide. My bag is 15 inches wide, 14 inches high. This was a scrap, so it's a different size, and that's okay if it's a little too big. You obviously don't want it too small. If it's too big, that's fine, because once we get this front piece assembled, we're going to trim it down and square everything up, because it's very difficult to stay square when you're sewing on this binding and zipper and some of these other parts. So a little too big is fine. Now you can buy plastic. They sell in quilt shops, and for bag making you can buy just a small roll of it. I buy this by the yard at a store that sells the, you know, huge rolls of plastic that you buy by the yard to cover a picnic table or a tablecloth or something like that. I prefer to buy it there. Just pick a gauge that you like. I think, no, I had another piece here that was a different gauge. Sometimes they have like roll ends, and they're only ½ a foot, and they sell them really cheap because nobody obviously can use ½ a foot for a tablecloth or something. So you want a mid gauge. I'm looking to see, yeah, this one of these here is heavier than this one. You just want it heavy enough that your things aren't going to poke and stretch it out of shape. I don't like to go too heavy, not because it causes a problem with the bag, but it makes the bag itself weigh more. And because of the way I haul these around to retreats and things, you know, when you're flying especially, every ounce counts. And so I would go with a mid weight. When I cut it, I do keep the paper with it. So this is just like a tissue paper that lines it. It will be helpful to use when sewing this. So when I go to sew this, so that this doesn't stick to my sewing machine bed, when I go to sew a couple pieces together, and you'll see the assembly here, I will scooch this out of the way so that I can stitch on it. Sometimes I'll just stitch right through the paper too, because it will tear off. But this just helps it slide along the sewing machine bed as I'm sewing. I don't have the plastic wanting to stick and grip to things. So I keep the paper with it. So we've got our plastic. The other thing you're gonna need is a strip for the top. And this is gonna go this way. So with this is 5 inches. It is folded in half and ironed down, and I have a strip of interfacing just on one side. That's just to give this a little bit of body and stability so it's not too floppy. I've used Shape Flex 1-on-1 and I use it for other things, and so I often have little skinny scraps and it works great for this. I wouldn't buy Shape Flex 1-on-1 just for this, for project bags. It's pricey for an interfacing. But you just want some mid-weight, probably not light weight. You just want a mid-weight interfacing to go on one side. I usually put it on the side that I plan on having out. And that's because that ironed on interfacing, oh, and it should be fusible. That ironed on interfacing just keeps this from getting wrinkly and buckly and funny looking. So it will just keep things nice and smooth looking on the outside. I've got threads here that need to be clipped. So you'll see, this is maybe, nope, this is smaller. So I did this one 5 inches, so fold it in half. It's a 2-inch long strip, but you could do any size. You don't want it to get too far down or it's going to be awkward getting things in there. You want it near the top, but I have gone a little wider or a little narrower if there's a specific pattern that I want to highlight. I don't have a project bag here with a good example, but well, this is kind of one, right? I wouldn't want this to just show like the bottom of the turtle shells, or let's say something like this would be kind of ugly. So I've been choosy in picking out which direction, which side I want to use, and doing a little bit of centering so that some of the turtles are in here almost complete. I didn't want the zipper clear down here, so that's why it's folded there. That's a good size. 2.5 inches. The 5-inch strip folded in half to 2.5 inches is my most common size, unless I'm trying to accommodate something. And then just like the cat, if there was a design I wanted here, or more often the design I want on the back, I have done different size bags just to accommodate the fabric pattern that I have. All right, let's work on assembly. Oh, we need one more thing. Actually, we need kind of 2 more things, but I also need a piece of fabric. This is 2.5 inches wide that I'm going to make like binding. I'm going to iron this down here. And it is to attach to the plastic. So we're going to bind the edge of the plastic so that we're not trying to sew the zipper directly onto the plastic. So I'm going to pause here. I need to do a little bit of ironing. And then I'm going to come back and show a little bit of assembly. This is my zipper too, by the way. Show a little bit of the assembly, and then I'm going to go sew. So we're going to have some breaks here, but I'm going to stop the camera and I will be right back once I get a little bit of ironing done. Okay, I am back. I only had 2 pieces I had to iron. So I mentioned that my piece of Pellon was fusible, so it has an iron-on adhesive on both sides. So I have fused my front and my back onto the Pellon. I'm setting this aside now. It's essentially done. There's no assembly required for the back other than that. So let's start working on the assembly for the front, and it's going to go together like this. One of the things you want to consider is which direction you want your bag to open. I prefer mine to open left to right. And And every now and then I forget and do one backwards. It's obviously going to work either way. It's a habit. And when you get used to them going one way, it's a little disconcerting when you go to unzip your bag and it's going the other direction. So I normally do left to right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sew that 2.5 inch strip. I ironed this in half. This was the other piece I had to do. I'm going to sew this down to the plastic, and I'm going to do it so that I then can attach this edge to the zipper without trying to deal with attaching the zipper directly to the plastic, which also is going to be ugly. I'm not even sure how you would do that and have it pretty. I like to do mine just 2.5 inches, so when it folds around, it's going to be fairly narrow like this. You'll see on one of the bags that I purchased, they've got the top smaller and they have this wider. So, you know, if you mismeasure something, don't panic about it. It's probably still going to work. But I've sort of gotten in a rhythm with mine and what sizes I use. So let me go sew this on, and then we'll continue construction. Okay, I am back. I have now stitched this down. And what we are going to do next, let me get something firm under here. I want to press this back just so it's nice and smooth. And I have a tool to do this, but of course I can't find it. I think it's probably in a travel sewing bag. So I'm just going to use the edge of my pair of scissors here just so I have something firm to press that back. I can't use the iron because I've got plastic under here. So by doing this, I had the 2.5 inch piece. I folded it in half. I have stitched the raw edge even with the plastic so that when I wrap this around and stitch it from what will be the front, all of this raggedy edge will be enclosed. So we have nothing but a nice smooth finish inside the bag. This will be the inside of the bag, and this will be the outside. So I am going to go back to the sewing machine and stitch this down. But I think while I'm over there, I'm going to go ahead and stitch this to my zipper just to save me trips and turning the camera on and off here and making you all dizzy with that. So again, I've got my zipper on the left side because I want to open left to right. I'm going to stitch this down. My zipper is much wider than, I don't know if I can get the whole thing in here. My zipper is much wider than my fabric. You want it to be at least as wide as the fabric. I'm going to cut the ends off so it doesn't matter, and we'll talk about some tricks there. But this is where I'm going to put that seam tape to use. I'm just going to, let me just put this here so I can kind of gauge how wide my thing is there. You can stick this to the zipper or to the, I mean, we're going to stick them both together, so whatever's easier. And I'm going to use the edge of my zipper again just to press this firmly down. I want that adhesive. It's not really sticky. It is a tiny bit, but it's not like glue or anything. I want to press it down so that I'm sure that that adhesive adheres to the zipper, and then I'm going to carefully lift an end. All right, let me try lifting the other end. Tell me neither one. There it goes. I want to just lift the paper. And you can see, I think even on camera, that there's that adhesive down there. Now I'm going to put this down, and again, I'm double checking that I've got the part you know, the side that I want to show. I don't want this one. This one would only have one turtle. This one has two in pretty good positioning here. And so I'm just going to line this up. I want it to be about the same width from the zipper all the way across. And I'm doing this one about 1/8 of an inch. You will see this bag I purchased, it's about 1/8. Yeah, these all are. Now here's one that I did that's a lot closer. 1/8 of an inch is a good distance. It doesn't need to be exact, you just want it to be even across there. Now what that tape's doing for us, I didn't use the tape one time. I just was I had a bunch, I was gonna assembly line them, and I got in a rush and I completely forgot the tape. And I started sewing them together, and I kept grumbling about the zippers that I was using. I had some cute zippers, and I thought the zipper was the problem. Then I went to use a good zipper, I mean a brand that I knew wouldn't do this, and it was doing the same thing. And what it was doing as I stitched, it was rippling. It wasn't laying flat after it was stitched. And I had sewn like 3 or 4 of them together before I realized, oh shoot, I forgot to use the tape. And I tore one apart and I used the tape, and that rippling completely disappeared. So the tape definitely serves a purpose. It also just helps keep this lined up. I'm just using my scissors here to have something firm to press that down. It keeps it lined up so that you've got your zipper going straight too. So this one I'm gonna just stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, not from the zipper teeth, but from the edge of the fabric. What I want to get is this top stitching along here, just to hold the zipper in, attach the zipper to it. Sorry, I didn't make this bag. I was just looking to see what they had done, if they had done something there. Every now and then, but not always, I will come back and I will do a second stitch so that it's out closer to the edge of the zipper. I haven't really found that that's necessary. I thought maybe the zipper would just flop around less inside. Honestly, just with the one stitch, I don't noticing it flopping around inside, so save yourself the seam. So I am going to go now, and I'm going to stitch this. I'm going to stitch this over here along this open edge, so I'm folding it down. I'm going to stitch this edge, and I'm going to stitch this on, and I'll be back again. All right, I'm back. I got those both stitched down, so this one's probably closer to 1/4 of an inch. Again, it doesn't matter. You're just attaching the zipper to this, and this is what the back looks like. When I was talking about something flopping around, this edge will be loose inside. It's not going to hurt anything. We're not really doing anything in the top of the bag anyway, typically. So then one of the tricky parts, we do want to line this up as best we can. And my plastic, remember, it was wider than what I really need. And this is where this will be an advantage, because after I stitch this down, I'm going to be able to square this up so that it's 14 by 15. And it's okay if I'm a little off. So what's easy to do is get your things stitched down and realize you were off a tiny bit. And now, you know, it's short the other way on the other end. On the other end, it looks like this. And if you do that, if it's not too big of a difference, you can usually just work it into the outer seam. If it's too big of a difference, you may have to trim some pieces down to square it up a little better. But I am again going to use the tape here, and again, This is just going to help me hold this mess together while I stitch it and keep things from stretching out of place. Where are my scissors? I don't know what it is about the zippers that they want to stretch a bit. It may have been the sewing machine I was using that time too. I was at a retreat and a quilting retreat, and I was using my travel machine, not my, what I refer to as my good machine. It's really just a much bigger machine, but it does have a few more bells and whistles. It's not too crazy fancy, but I quilt my quilts myself, so you almost have to have a slightly bigger machine to be able to do that. All right, now I usually will try to, I wasn't really pushing down there. I was sort of just tapping the fabric down. What I want to try to do is have this positioned on the zipper so that the same amount of zipper is going to show on each side of the teeth. I'm obviously not measuring. It doesn't need to be exact, but I don't like the look if one side is really wide and the other side is very narrow. So I've just positioned it there so that it's kind of the same. And now I'm going to go stitch this, and we are actually almost done. I've got this stitched down. So my front is essentially done. I did do one more thing when I was in there. Remember, my zipper is much lighter than my fabric. It's a bigger zipper than I need. This was this was zipped, so the zipper tab was all the way out here. I have moved it over so that it's onto the bag, and I did a little bit of stitching here. That is so that this stays with my bag. I'm going to trim this front piece up now, and every now and then I forget to do that, and I zip along with the rotary cutter, and this is trash, and the zipper pull is over here, and you can get it back on, and every now and then it just pops right back on, but the other 90% of the time it will definitely have me cursing before I manage to get it back on. So I did that little bit of stitching there to hold this on. Now what I want to do is a little bit of squaring up, because remember, actually let me do this way. This is, my plastic was bigger than what I needed. Actually, maybe just right this direction. All right, sorry if you just saw my roots or anything there. I was just checking. I want this edge to be even, because I've got extra plastic here that I'm going to cut off. So to keep it square, this is the side that I've got to start with. And now I'm just going to zip this off. Yes, cutting through zippers is a little hard on your rotary blade. I have a couple rotary cutters, and that one, I'm actually okay on this side. That one is about due to be swapped out anyway. The blade, that is. All right, making sure everything's good and squared up. Now I'm going to trim that off. All right. Oh, actually, you know what? I do need to trim the bottom a little bit. So remember, I'm 15 inches wide. That's the same width as my cutter, but I'm only 14 inches tall. So I do have some extra on my plastic here. I thought I did. I just want this to be as square as I can get it. That looks pretty good. Again, we're making project bags. This isn't receiving whatever here. All right, now is when I need my clips. Okay, I'm going to pull the plastic or the paper out of the inside, but I'm going to set it aside because I am still going to use that prop most likely. Now I'm just going to line this up on my bottom. And I know my bottom was good and square. I'm going to put some of these clips on here, and where I like to do it is right around the zipper. So let me put a couple on each side at the zipper. And I want some on the bottom. So all this is going to keep this from doing is, actually I'm going to put 3 on the bottom. When you're sewing this type of project, you can start out nice and square and depend on how your sewing machine is feeding from the top and the bottom. And I do use a walking foot for this, but you don't need one. I've done many bags without the walking foot, usually because I'm traveling or I'm too lazy to change the foot. So you can do with the walking foot or with the regular foot. I've never had any problem, but the top will want to skew from the bottom. Remember this batting that I'm using is foam. It's smushy. And as you sew around, this will want to shift and do a little funny thing. So these clips just keep everything, the top squared up to the bottom. What I'm going to go do now is I'm going to zigzag around the entire outer edge of this. And then we are almost done. Just notice my fabric's a little wrinkled there. I didn't iron it very well. There is another technique for bags where the bottom fabric would be bigger. Here, this bag maker has used this technique. The bottom fabric is bigger than the top, and it's folded up around to make the binding. I have made a few bags this way, and here, I made this one this way. So this is the back, and it was wider, and it's folded up around. I found that to be more fiddly and pain in the neck than just doing binding like you would bind a quilt. So it's more common for me to just do binding. But at this point, I'm just going to go zigzag around the edges so we can get this bag finished. Okay, everybody, here is my bag. My bag is finished. I zigzagged around the edge. It's not a little zigzag. It's not very deep because I'm only going to be doing a 1/4 inch seam around here with the binding, but it's wide. So, you know, zigzags like this, not like this. Because I want to zip around here. All that is doing is holding these pieces together into my project bag, and the zigzag is compressing the foam, which makes it a little bit easier when I go to do the binding. And you see my zippers here. We're all nicely finished inside. Yeah, I have picked out this same fabric, which I often do. I'll usually do 3 fabrics, one for the inside, one for the back and the top part, and then one for the binding, including this strip along here. So this is going to be the binding all the way around the bag. Of course, it won't be that big. It's only going to be about this big, or wide, because it's going to get, it's 2.5 inches. It's going to get folded in half. I will stitch it on from the back. So let's talk about this a little bit. I'm not going to actually do this binding because binding I don't think is my strong suit. I know there are a ton of binding tutorials out there. If you're a quilter, you likely already have your own favorite binding techniques for joining the ends and all the fun things. It's not my favorite part of quilting. It's kind of one of the necessary evils, I'll call it. But the way I will bind this is I've got my 2.5 inches. You can go slightly smaller if you want. It doesn't have to be 2.5. I know people that even for their quilts do 2.25 or 2 3/8. So I'll get my binding traditional, and then I will attach it from the back. So you want your raw edge. You want your raw edge against the raw edge from the back, so that you will flip it around after it's stitched down. Your pretty edge will be on the front, and I'll stitch down here. I will show you one thing that I don't bother to fuss about on my bags. You can see it really easily on this Christmas bag that I was waving around earlier. So this one I did that way. I stitched it down from the back, I flipped it around to the front, and then I have stitched right along the edge on the front. You will notice my binding on the front, and this usually the way I do it, it will almost always do this. The binding on the front is wider than it is on the back. So when I stitch it down from the front, I will have a seam along the back. Right there's the seam, you can see it. See it there? This does not bother me. I'm fine with this. These are project bags. This is not like an heirloom quilt. If it were an heirloom quilt, I would be stitching it down from the front and hand binding on the back. I just want cute bags to put all my stitchy projects in, but I really want to spend my time stitching, not making project bags. But I do like having a project bag that matches all my projects. This is for Rosewood Manor. I think it's called High Tide, which I want to start this year. If this bothers you, having this stitch along here, you can do the same thing, attach it from the back. You'll want to do either narrower than 2.5 inches when you cut your binding, or you'll want to sew this seam a little bit more than 1/4 inch, because this is 1/4 inch here. Because I sewed it at 1/4 inch and then flipped it around to the front. So that's what we're seeing is 1/4 inch. So you would want to be a skosh wider than that. You can, when you flip it around to the front, use like Roxanne's glue based, and you can feel where the back is and the front, and you can make sure that when you fold it to the front, they're aligned front to back, so that when you stitch this edge on the front, you will also get it stitched in that same spot on the binding on the back. That's a lot of work to me for a project bag, so I don't bother doing that. This does not bother me having this stitch. This does a little bit because it's crooked, but here, this one's straight. This does not bother me having this here. And what I will usually do if the colors are very different, like I did it on this one, as long as you use the same brand of thread, you can do this. I have used a green thread for my top thread, and I used a cream thread for the bottom, because I knew it was going to overstitch onto this, and I didn't want a green line showing around there. I knew it wasn't going to be perfectly straight. So I've used a different color top thread and bottom thread just to make that work a little bit there. So hopefully this helps. Maybe you've experimented with making bags. I make them all the time myself, like I said, but I do like watching other bag maker videos. I always pick other tips and tricks. I forgot I had pulled a couple other bags in here because I wasn't sure I was explaining this very well. This bag, I cut a definite width because I wanted those leaves to show up with the little smiley face acorns in there. This one is a smaller size, so these are great when you got the little 5.5 by, you know, the paper folded in half. 5.5 by 8.5, they would be here. Patterns, smaller projects, my travel projects, I like having this size bag. This one is this size and shape because I wanted this little fox. He was from a panel. Here you can see my stitching. This I should have switched and put a blue thread on the back, but I get distracted by the bag, whatever projects in there. There's always other things to distract me. Nobody's going to notice the little imperfections in your bag except you, and probably only you if you're doing like I am right now and you're critiquing an empty bag. Nobody else, including yourself, will ever notice it in the day-to-day use. But yeah, this is why this was a different size. It's because I wanted that little fox. My foxes here are gone now. They have, I still see them on my cameras at night some, but the babies are out of the den and have moved on. So happy stitching, everyone, and I will see you in 2 weeks with a ton of my usual stitching, and I'll be back on camera. But have a good time, and I'll see you soon. Bye.